Lord, save me. We have all kinds of moments in our life when that's the only prayer we can utter. It might be the prayer you utter when you are still at the doctor's office, receiving news that will forever change your life. Lord, save me. It could be the prayer that's the only prayer you have when you find the direction and the path that you've been on in your life. Maybe it's that you lost a job. Maybe it's that you lost a partner in your work together. But all of a sudden, the way seems dark and cloudy, and you have no idea where to turn. Lord, save me. It's even possible that you didn't study for your midterm. And you said, God, save me! There's all manner of times we get there. There's an entire favorite scripture of mine for these kinds of times in Romans 8, which is really the power-packed part of Romans, which is like saying the power-packed part of the power-packed text, because Romans is deeply rich. And Paul, this tender side of Paul, says that sometimes we get in a place in our life when we don't even have words for what's wrong. And Paul says, in those moments, the Spirit intercedes for us with sighs too deep for words. It's beautiful, and it's poignant, and it's so deeply true. Peter imagines that everything is really going quite well. He was scared, he was reassured. He sees Jesus, and here in this very intimate movement of their developing relationship, Peter challenges Jesus, really. If it is you, Lord, the implication being, are you, not just are you Jesus, but are you the Lord? If it really is you, Lord, command me to come out to you. And Jesus replies, come. Now, one of the things about receiving a sacred text, frankly any text, is we can read these things however we want. It doesn't come with stage directions. It doesn't say, and then Jesus said flippantly, come. It doesn't say, Jesus said with deep, resounding bass vibrato, come. It just tells us that Jesus said, come. Just like later, it's going to tell us that Jesus said, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? And we don't know whether that was Jesus being mocking of Peter, you just don't have enough faith, or whether it was tender. Oh, you of burgeoning, little but still growing faith. You had it. Why'd you let it go? Right? Almost not reprimand, but encouragement. So we have this text, and this text gets interpreted with how we feel the movement of the story. It's part of why we can come anew to this text each time. But one of the things that I'm remarking about in this time that I'm reading it is, though we don't know, the implication is Peter is walking on water. right? The artist who renders that art for you that's in your insert kind of is trying to grab onto some of the sublimeness of that. What must it have felt like to Peter to be so at one with the divine that he was doing that which we call impossible? Have you ever had that feeling? Have you ever walked on water? There have been moments, I can actually most vividly picture those. Usually it was in an overnight shift in the hospital when you were thrust into a terrible situation and yet you held it together. And you tried to create a sense of calm and peace in a place in which there was none. And I can remember the feeling of walking down an empty hallway after a visit like that, feeling like almost walking on water, right? Anyone else ever felt the sense to which you just felt like right now, I am at one? Yeah, there's a hand. You can get them all the way up. It's okay to admit. Because, it's not arrogant, because the next moment we started sinking. And we can all admit that one too, right? Who has been walking on water, and then you realized, I can't walk on water. I'm only human. There's Looney Tunes rules apply here, right? You can run out past the edge of the cliff as long as you don't look down. And Wile E. Coyote will keep going. It's when you look down that you get in trouble. Do you notice that in this text? So Peter is in the boat. They're all afraid. Everyone is afraid. They think Jesus is a ghost. The text itself, I don't know if you got in that. There's all these contradictions in the text. Immediately this, but this, and this. And it feels like being hit by the waves from both sides on a boat. Can you feel that in the text? We got sent away, and then we couldn't get anywhere because the wind is blowing, and we're being battered out to the middle of the deep water, which is just making it harder because the waves are even bigger there. And you can feel the tossed and fro of it. And in this place, you're not thinking your buddy Jesus is who's walking up next to the boat in that moment. And then this deep reassuring voice says, it's I. Don't panic. We got this. And then from that place of panic, now this sort of euphoria of, I'm saved, sets in. And Peter dares something bold. Really bold. He decides to test this fledgling relationship that he has with Jesus to imagine that he can do something only Jesus could do. In fact, a minute ago, he didn't even know Jesus had that in his bag of tricks, right? And now he's walking on water. Now, I love the next thing that happens in the text. What does it say now? He's walking, right? He's making progress. And then it says, he noticed that it was windy out. Now, I don't know if you remember this, but they've spent all night trying to row across a not very big sea because the wind is so crazy. So why he forgot about that when he decided to walk, one of the things that I think is fascinating is Peter really is crying to get saved from himself, right? I got this harebrained idea and now I'm in it. Because he gets out here and all of a sudden he remembers it's not just him and Jesus. There's a storm raging around him. And all of a sudden the Peter we met last week who slouched down at the feet of Jesus and said, Master, leave me, for I am a sinful man. That guy suddenly showed up again in the story, and the peace and the ability to walk on the water just shatters. And the world just falls out from under him. the artwork that you have, the word that came to me as I was looking at it is overwhelmed, right? Do you know that the word whelmed is in fact a word? The word whelmed largely went out of usage in the beginning of the 20th century, but the word whelmed means to like go under the water, right? So in that sense, the word overwhelmed really means you're whelmed. You're doubly whelmed. You're whelmed up to here. No, up to here, right? Again, who has ever been overwhelmed? Right? Overwhelmed by life, overwhelmed by the things you committed to do, the things you dared to imagine. And in that moment, when everything falls out from under you, well, Sarah said it best. I almost just can't even see. Where would I even start? And Peter starts with prayer. A prayer akin to sighs too deep for words. Lord, rescue me. And immediately, Jesus reaches down and plucks him out of the waters. And Jesus says, "Oh, Peter, you almost had it." For some reason, most of the time when we read this text, we jump on the bandwagon of criticizing Peter for what he couldn't do. What we don't do is recognize that 11 disciples didn't even imagine to ask the question. Hearing Jesus say, "Come," they still didn't join Peter in the journey. And Peter was doing it. The audacity to imagine that Jesus' simple word, "come," could make him defy nature and its laws. We were in First Light, and one of the people said, "Well, I'm a little confused because it feels Tower of Babel for me. It feels like Peter dared to be God." That Peter was saying, "Jesus, if it really is you, make me as powerful as you. Let me do a thing that only you can do." So why is that okay here? This is the power of starting to look at narrative arcs, not looking at a story in isolation, but a narrative arc of Peter's story, right? So we had last week the sniveling Peter, the Peter who was like, "Oh, you're really going to make me go fishing again, Peter," right? You all remember Clint was Peter, and Kathy was Jesus. We acted it all out right up here. And we looked at who this Peter was. Adult Peter, living in his own house, married, with his own boat and his trade, but convinced of his own near worthlessness. And then we looked at the Peter that we're going to meet in Acts and beyond. The Peter who gets called the first pope. The Peter whose demonstrative preaching in the book of Acts creates thousands of new converts who want to get a little piece of the deep and abiding faith he exhibits. And we go, "Who put that there?" That's what we go. No. We go, how do you get from that to that? Right? How are those the same people? Have you ever done a trust fall exercise? Okay, I need hands again. Right? No rhetorical questions here. Trust fall, everyone done a high ropes course? Right? Any of those things? Right? So I have not my wife's level of fear of heights, but I'm not necessarily like fond of the whole feeling like I'm going to plummet to my death, you know? So when you do a high ropes course, for instance, you strap in to these things, and there's all these carabiners, which I'm sure they test, right? And you snap into one, and then you like go walk on a cable, you know. And let me just tell you that my sisters were gymnasts, and I was not. Like, I got the bad end of the gene pool when it came to balance. So like that first step, it's really, really hard. The best thing that you can do when you're on a high ropes course is fall. Because what happens? You don't go very far. Because it turns out that you snapped into that carabiner with that strap around your waist for a reason. You weren't the first person that gravity worked on. I think I'm back. And then you suddenly are like, oh, I can fall and survive. And you get back up, and all of a sudden, this big weight is removed from your shoulders. You can take that next step with a great deal more success because now you trust the system around you. Right? When you do a trust fall, you get up on something. The park I can envision from my youth group days in high school had these larger and larger pillars you would get on. So you get up here, right? And then 6 people would like lock their arms and they were going to catch you. And you look down, right? If this is a coworker exercise, you look down and you're like, I do not trust them. I know them too well, right? But then you get invited to just fall back flat as a board. And there's nothing quite like that feeling when you don't hit the ground, but you get caught. And then that trust that is developed when you fall and get caught becomes deeply empowering. We've been through this. We've had life fall apart on us, and we're still here to tell the tale. Immediately, Jesus reached down and offered Peter a hand. There's probably a reason that in every moment Jesus sends out disciples. He sends them out in pairs. Paul, who wears out every partner he goes on a missionary journey with, still takes a partner on every missionary journey because immediately the hand reached out and plucked you up out of the waters. If we want to know what makes Peter go from that to that, a significant portion of it is this right here. The moment Peter dares to be bold enough to imagine that if Christ tells him so, he can walk on water, and does it, and fails at it, and lives to tell the story. In a favorite book of mine called The Training of the 12, A.B. Bruce says that the Peter of the Acts of the Apostles with Paul stands before the Sanhedrin on trial for his life, and they are amazed at his audacity. That's the word A.B. Bruce used, the audacity. They begin to imagine that these apostles could do anything and would try anything in Jesus' name. They would not be stopped by the scorn of their classmates. They would not be stopped by the power of the authorities. They would not be stopped by the laws of nature or by common sense. How, oh how did they become this bold? They did it by almost drowning in the Sea of Galilee. They did it by failing to heal people. They did it by time and again spending time with Jesus, who would say to them, "Oh, Peter, so close, so close. Don't doubt yourself. You've got this." As we bind our wandering hearts to thee, we are invited to cultivate the audacity of Peter, one who could not imagine himself worthy of anything, who then dares to walk on water. We are called to become audacious in the name of the good news that rescued us from danger, and share that good news like the psalmist does to a generation yet unborn. To recognize that when we, not karate chopping each other, but we draw each other in, well, we can do just about anything. And at worst, survive it together. Oh, Peter, so close. Now take that little faith and try it again. This is the word of the Lord. Random question, because sometimes the world goes out from under me. Have you ever heard that saying before? Do you have an insert that has the hymn in it? Okay, so just not the ones that you have. Do you all have that? Okay, so it's just Ryan who has no idea what he's doing. This should go well. I invite you now to stand for our hymn.